thank you so much for your time today and for joining us with this masterclass. So Italy is a great passion for me. In my day job, I work a lot with Italy. So my day job is that I run a marketing and consulting agency. And what I love about Italy, well, apart from the fact that I studied ancient and classical history, which really gives you such a feeling for the way Italy fuses this sense of tradition, but also creativity. It's so strong in Italy. I also love working with Italy because I feel that you can make such a difference. I think that Italian fine wine, certainly in the UK, is still really has so much unfulfilled potential. And all of the producers that whose wines we're showing today are producers who I know through the Old Vine Conference, but also whose wines I knew before we started working with the Old Vine Conference. And I think following the Old Vine kind of thread through Italy is a really wonderful way of synthesizing this very particular, very creative, but sort of also very pragmatic culture in Italy. So our producers, we have Domenico Veronese from Villa Bogdano. Villa Bogdano is an estate on what is now in the Veneto, but is really on the border with Friuli, near to the beautiful Venetian era city of Portograo. And Friuli is a denomination, a region with a high reputation. Veneto whites are so underestimated, and I loved when I first came and tried this wine. It's a unique variety made in a really beautiful Lisi mineral way. Domenico will tell us a bit more about it as we go. Tessa Donadieu, in a slight change to the published program, we still have Tessa is from Vinchio Vaglio. Tessa is the export director for Vinchio Vaglio, and she was one of the first producers from Italy who really supported the Old Vine Conference. And when we started holding our field trips, where we do take groups of buyers and journalists into the vineyards, Vinchio Vaglio was the second field trip that we had. Domenico's was the first, and Tessa and her colleagues at the cooperative of Vinchio Vaglio in Monferrato have really been rewarded by their commitment to old vines with great commercial success and an absolutely elevating result in wine quality and perception. Andrea Farinetti is winemaker at Borgogno, and Andrea, I think it's fair to say that when you took over, you really looked at the vineyards as a way of kind of just a great name, Borgogno, amazing heritage, but it needed sort of almost reconnecting with its roots, but also with its relevance. And you centered its old vine plantings in your vision for Borgogno. And we're going to hear more about that as Andrea goes on. I should say I did my MW dissertation on Barolo, which was a while ago, and I love the kind of paradox of Barolo. I was pregnant when I did my MW dissertation, and they told me in Piedmont, oh, there's a little local law that a pregnant woman should have a thimble of Barolo every day. And when I had my son, he was enormous. Good. And he's still enormous. So I have a special affection for Barolo. And then Viviana Malafarina, who you would have seen on our panel just before we came into this session, is the winemaker and general manager and looks after the vineyards as well at Basilisco. This is down in Basilicata, beautiful remote area of Italy, really renowned for Aglianico. And I do think great Aglianico is, well, I said to one Italian friend who's from Napoli, oh, you know, someone told me that Aglianico is like the Barolo of the south. And he said, no, Barolo is the Aglianico of the north. So you've got a nice sort of little segue.
we have worse sentence about this.
Yeah. I'm going to actually ask the producers to take you through their wines. So we have 2 wines from each producer. Domenico, I'm going to hand over to you to talk through the the first wine, which is a Tokai Friulano, also known as Thai, also known as Sauvignon As. And I should just say, if you scan the QR code on your tasting sheets, it will take you to a Dropbox if you want to have a look at the tech sheets. So, yeah, should we try this wine? Over to you.
Sure. So, good afternoon. This wine comes from Tokai Friulano vineyard, which was planted in 1943. And it's a yellow-berried biotype, typically of the old biotypes, because the clones were only introduced in the late 60s, and we have now about 14 clones. This is one of the original biotypes, and the yellow-berried has a much more complex profile than the green-berried one, which is much similar to the Sauvignon As, which the DNA analysis has shown it can be traced back to. It grows on a soil which is relatively heavy. It has about just over 40% of clay on which lays over a calcareous soil of alluvial origin, which I think gives to this wine part of its traits and a part of its minerality. Given the high content of clay and partially given the age of the vineyard, the yield is in the region of 60 quintals per hectare, so roughly I imagine 25 quintals per acre. Size of the plot is approximately 3.5 hectares.
Should we talk a little bit about the work you've done with the epigenetic selection for this variety?
Yes, basically, I'm not coming from like 3 or 4 generations of winemakers and farmers. With my brother-in-law, who's the winemaker, we took over the estate 10 years ago, and we found about 18 hectares of old vineyards, which makes it one of the 2 Italian biggest extension of old vineyards. So it was quite a challenging task to save these old vineyards and to make sure we could preserve them for posterity. We have started with a program of muscle selection, finding from all the different biotypes we have in the estate, preserving the genetic traits. And more recently we have started replanting just short of 5 hectares of Tokai Friulano, and from mainly 4 biotypes which we have selected as the best ones, based on the quality of the fruit, but even on their resilience. One thing which we try to approach in a scientific way is to see how the muscle selection from old vines helps us and helps the vineyards to withstand some not only climate change but some pathogens. In particular, Flavescens Torre is one where our old vineyards seem to be quite resilient. In the case of Tokai Friulano, it's the grape variety as well that's quite immune to gold flavescence, but we have as well the second wine we'll try, which is the Merlot. Merlot can be attacked, and the old vineyards are quite resilient to that. And we're doing this mother field as well, which is where every single vine is codified. The idea is to try to keep them for prosperity, to keep all these individual biotypes.
Thank you. So I love the way this wine teeters on generosity. So Tokai Friulano, which used to be Tokai, was then renamed after the EU regulation that says that you can't have this sort of confusion between a PDO and a grape variety. So the Hungarians took Tokai. But actually the reason it's called Tokai is of course because of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and so this is Sauvignon As, which they think was brought in from France by the vineyard workers at the time, and it really found its sort of a certain new spiritual home Friuli, and it was called Tokai because to the people at the time, they said, oh, that really delicious white wine. It kind of reminds me of Tokai, because that was their reference for fine white wine at the time. So Tokai Friulano, and I think that this has this such a lovely sort of mineral exoticism, this wine. And I am such a big fan of good Italian white wines, and I think there's so much potential for great Italian whites to really reach their level of prestige and sort of acclaim as the reds. I've got a couple of wine merchant friends in London who are sort of, oh, well, you know, basically there's Pierre Pan, you know, a bit of Gaia, but who else is making great white wine in Italy? You know, it's such an underestimated style. What do you think of this wine? I love the way, as I say, it sort of teeters. I think Italian reds are about textural drama, and then Italian whites are about this real sort of mouth palate perfume. You know, it comes out it's not driving into the nose. It really expresses itself texturally. It's like textural perfume. So, an absolutely lovely wine, which has had some great reviews as well. Shall we taste the Merlot, and you can tell us a bit more about your
Just
your
a quick
work
last comment on there's one statistics that I'd like to quote is at Wine Searcher, which is undisputedly the biggest search engine in the wine industry. We always like to think, Italians in particular, that Italian wines are by definition very famous worldwide. And in the top 1,000 by brand authority, actually Italy ranks second only to France with about 170 labels. Of these 170 labels, only 3 are white.
Oh.
And it's a shame because we do have a good number of white grape varieties that can produce premium whites, which have a great potential for longevity, great complexity, and yeah.
Obviously, mostly red today, but do seek out more Italian whites. And then Merlot. So this sort of northeastern bit of Italy, I think, is a second home for Merlot. And in an era where there's a lot of very sort of ripe, plush, you know, almost sort of tastily sort of like smashed fruit Merlot. I really love the definition in this wine. But do you want to tell us a little bit more about how you have to approach your Massal selection with the nursery and in-house treatment?
Well, what we do is over a period of 3 years, we make 3 analyses of the different vines, and we do them in 3 different vegetative stages, and we check the quality of the fruit at harvest. We do at the beginning of the vegetation, and the idea is basically in the different vegetative phases we can spot not only the evolution and the quality of the fruit, but we can spot the possible presence of diseases. And after the selection is done, we basically take the material for the new vineyards. And it's important, and it's quite disputed, because in recent years there have been lots of discussions about epigenetics and the recovery theory, but the idea is basically that the qualities and the properties of the mother vine the traits can be inherited. So all this evolution and adaptation that helps a vine to grow and acquire resistance can be transmitted through Massal selection. So we don't necessarily pick individuals which are completely healthy, but particularly individuals that have gone through various phases of diseases and that have acquired a resistance to the to the disease. So the important part is to make sure that whenever a vine is showing some symptoms, the symptoms have to be extremely mild, and the potential of infection and contagion has to be contained, because otherwise you have a problem.
And you have to get a special license to work in this way, yes? To
It's
basically work with plants that have
standpoint.
recovered from viral infection.
It is extremely complicated. Obviously, at the time of a pandemic, you're not allowed to play with fire, and particularly we are an organic producer, so during COVID it has been particularly difficult because there were lots of fields left uncultivated, which meant that the spread of some infections was quite tough for us, because in organic for some diseases you have pretty much no protection.
So the Merlot, tell us a bit about the Merlot. You've got old vines here.
Yes, the vineyard is the oldest vineyard is approximately 3 hectares from 1958, and together with Refosco, which is another great variety we are growing nearby, it's the part of the estate that has the highest concentration of dark clay, which is one of the highest in Europe as well, because it reaches in some points 54%, which means it's phenomenally difficult to work. We have problems from compacting to drainage issues to asphyxia, so there's lots of issues, which means we need to try and keep the soil aerated, and we do it by way of cover crops, by using tools which are as light as possible, and by using mechanical ways of pinching in the soil to make sure that water, oxygen, and nutrients can filter through. It's very difficult, but at the same time, this heavy clay can be very rewarding, because it gives nice concentrated wines, but even the tannins can be particularly elegant.
So I love the agility and the vibrancy of this Merlot, the fine texture. It's so bright and light-footed, and 195 refers to the single vineyard plot in the old Napoleonic cadastre. So in the kind of the carve-up of this region, all of the historic vineyards were mapped in on the decree of Napoleon, and you can actually go to the museum in Venice and see these original maps. So this is why it's 195, because it actually shows this vineyard has been in the local register, the Napoleonic cadastre. So that was the late 1800s. So this is a place of deep viticultural heritage. I'm going to move on because we've got to give all of the wines some time. But Domenico, thank you for your wines, and thank you for everything you do for the Old Vine Conference as well, and for sharing your research. So we are now moving to Piemonte and to Vinchio Vaglio. This is a model cooperative. Those of you in the earlier sessions would have heard their work. So Barbera in Monferrato. And we have 2 different expressions of Barbera. The first is a vieille vigne, stainless steel fermented, and map here just to show the location of Vinchio Vaglio. Do you want to take us a little bit through the cooperative, Tessa, and then we can talk about the wines?
Absolutely. So thank you everybody to be here tonight, because it's nearly night after that long day. Then thank you for your last extension of the day. So Vinchio Vaglio is a co-op born in 1959 from the idea of only 19 family wine growers. We are nowadays 200 family wine growers for 500 hectares. And the cooperative born to answer to a punitive situation at that time, because all the grape and the juice and the price of the grape and the juice was on hand of bottlers and negociants. So they took the idea to build their own production facility and put the effort together just to build that community of vine growers and to be their own control and to try to bottle their own wines. So it has been a very courageous choice, I would say, at that time. So the pillars of the winery, so we became a sustainable winery in 2023, but then you will see the timeline. It just took nearly 60 years to build that sustainability. The sustainability didn't come directly right after when we decided to build the cooperative, but it was just the impact that has that cooperative in a countryside where everybody was living, for example, to go and work in Turin at the car factory, Fiat. So it gives a virtuous circle economy. So that's one of the first pillars of the winery, the virtual circle economy that it creates in that territory that would have been abandoned. And then the second point is, of course, environmental, because thanks to the old vines, we got more certification, a specific certification for our old vines where we directly trace from the vineyards to the winery the exact path of these old vines. So it's very important because from the past, we managed to give a future to the winery throughout the old vines. So the project of old vines, born in the early 90s, when our phenomenologist, Giuliano Noè, had that vision to map the oldest vineyard of minimum 50 years old vines. And then nowadays we have 80, 90 years old vines. So the first wine you will taste comes from that very old vines. And the second wine, first maybe we will taste the first.
You taste the first?
Yeah, and then on the second one I have to explain a little bit about the appellation. So yes. The first is a pure expression of Barbera d'Asti. It's called Vigne Vecchie 50 because we released it for the 50th anniversary. The original project was a Barbera d'Asti Superiore and became a Barbera d'Asti because we wanted to give that the opportunity to the old vines to express themselves without the oak aging.
I love the pure exuberance of this wine, and there's something so beguiling about tasting, you know, a really authentic, layered, nuanced wine without any oak, and the way the texture just grips with resistance here. I think this is just such a joyous wine. And I also noted you got the Tre Bicchieri for this wine. So
year.
It's really interesting in the cooperative movement in Italy because it's a kind of double-edged sword, because first of all the cooperative movement came in after the war when even Piedmont, it was desperate. It was tons of, you know, La Malora, it was a semi-feudal society, all that kind of wealth had broken down. And the fact that these vineyards stayed planted was because of the cooperative movement. So it was a kind of exigent movement in a lot of ways, apart from, of course, there were some aristocratic families, but the cooperatives are really strong in Italy. There's often an association, certainly with old vines, that cooperatives don't recognize or appreciate old vines. In fact, lots of growers of old vines, for example, in the Roussillon in France, come out of the cooperative because the cooperative isn't willing to kind of valorize an old vine like category. But I just love the directness and the authenticity of this wine. I think if I were to do the MW again, it's the kind of wine you dream of getting in a blind tasting, because I feel it's so recognizable. It's so bright, delicious, crunchy, but yet with a kind of seriousness. But it's serious, but so joyful at the same time.
I remember when we met the first time. You remember I had that bottle on the table, and you were having that masterclass about rosé in London, and when you stop by and you say, "Wow," and I remember we really fell in love with this wine, and we spoke about old vines and just everything matched together. So it's really the time we decided to become a member of the Old Vine Conference.
Fantastic, thank you. Do you like this wine? It's what I would think of as it's so classily like smashable, and that is a very underrated but beautiful quality in wine. So, do you want to take us through to the next wine, which is
Yes.
a Nizza?
So, yeah, the first one was coming from 5 hectares, more or less, and we produced nearly, I'm sorry, my head is so tired, but we produced nearly 20,000 bottles, not in cases, I cannot convert, sorry. And the second wine is Nizza, is an appellation, which is not totally new because it's a project that was started from the input of part of the input of our former enologist Giuliano Noè with some other iconic producer of Barbera, Michele Chiarlo, when they decided to give to go towards premiumization of Barbera, because Barbera was considered like a table wine for so many years and really needed a voice and a specific appellation to go up on that pyramid of Barbera. That pyramid, by the way, has been designed by our former enologist. And so Nizza is, I will want to give you figures, is a more restricted area. So the soil, I didn't speak about the soil before, but it's mainly sandy soil, and the soil born between 5 and 3 million years ago during the Pliocene era. So we still have some shells and fossil, which help to give that uniqueness and freshness in our Barbera. So Nizza was a subzone, comes from Nizza Monferrato, a small village, which is only 10 kilometers far from Vinchio and Vaglio Serra, the founding village. And to give you figures, maybe they are not totally updated, but Barbera d'Asti represent nearly 21 million bottles produced, 400 producers, 170 villages. Nizza, only 1 million bottles produced, 18 villages for 90 producers. So to give you an idea that it consider, I want maybe to compare with Barolo or Barbaresco, who has been the best area to grow Nebbiolo. Nizza is considered the most located area to grow Barbera. And so, of course, we have more restricted criteria. For example, Barbera d'Asti is 9 tons per hectare, and Nizza is 7 tons per hectare. And of course, require oak aging. So this wine has 12 months of larger cask, and then another 12 months in the bottom. So it's a step up in the Barbera world.
Are you familiar with Nizza? It's taking off a bit in London, it's so interesting how you can see this is related to the Barbera, but it then takes on this lovely, almost like sanguine, like black cherry and cherry stone character. But it's a much sort of lower, it's a lower chakra kind of feeling in this one. Sorry, I'm really jet lagged now, so I'm just kind of going with it. It's basically free wine. Do you get it? It's more it's So let's do a chakra tasting next time.
Okay, that would be interesting. Yoga wine.
It's free association by this point. But I really also love, do you know what I mean? Even with this wine, textural drama, it kind of, this wine kind of slides in, but then actually there's this really lovely resistance, like inky resistance. And I think that, these really high, the reason Nizza is doing so well, it's selling into the smart sort of on-trade, and it's by the glass, but it gives you that sort of almost Piemontese kind of fragrance and quite distinctive interplay between fragrance and texture, But and it's also a very, you know, it's a wine that would grace the table. It's got that kind of courteous thing, but it's also just so, it has this exuberance, but tempered exuberance, and this sort of lovely loose weave tannin. I'm so sorry, the map didn't actually upload onto my presentation, but with it, we have got a map, and I will drop it into the Dropbox so that you can refer to it. And if
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
And I have 2 physical maps. So I can hear. So maybe if somebody is interested at the end, I can. We can sort who win the map. Yeah. But I have 2 physical maps, and we can go deeper. Thank you.
So then we're staying in Piemonte, and we're moving to Barolo. What you all need if you'd like to have a massive baby. Obviously not immediately. It's not the only thing you need. Sorry. I'm sorry, I'm losing my sort of seriousness now. Sorry, let me hand it over to Andrea Farinetti, actually whose family, of course, have done so much for the culture of Italian wine and food culture. Andrea is the winemaker at Borgogno, very historic, storied estate. But take us through what you're doing with in Borgogno now.
Yes, because we have a lot of time, I can explain the 264 years of Borgogno, year by year, minutes by minutes. No, anyway, when I'm starting in 2010 after the enology school, I made it in Alba, and I have say, okay, this winery have 250 years of history. I am 20 years old, so now what's happened? And the idea, just from the beginning, was preserve and maintain the idea of the classicity and the traditional things the Borgogno have it, because Borgogno is one of the most historical winery, the most historical, 1761, and super classic and traditional. And then the second thing was tradition is not the preserve the ash of the memory, but is works to maintain the fire active, no? And for this reason, we decide to for change nothing to change everything. And change everything, it means back to the work in a vineyard in organic way. I say back because before the 60s, everything's are organic in Italy because doesn't exist nothing of chemical, selective, etc. And then we start to work a lot on regenerative agriculture also, and then we decide to analyze all our different vines and vineyards, because before we unify everything at the same with the same idea, the same level, and all the single vineyard and parcel are really equalized and similar and flat. And I have an idea like, okay, if I have three different child, every child have different sensation, sensibility, I can use the same education for every child. So for this reason, I start to study all the single vineyard. We analyze everything, type of soil, geologic epocha, and capacity to preserve and retain the water, micro element, etc. Altitude, microclimate, and the vines. And thanks to this, from 2017, we adapt a little bit the vinification and we change a little bit, preserve the classicity and the tradition for sure, but to try to exact what the terroir do. Also because in the life, I think it's important to be able to define what you want to are. And I don't want to be a producer of wine varieties. I don't interest to be a producer of one variety. Variety is wine, because variety have a fit, can work everywhere. It's possible to reproduce everywhere, and then it's only for consume, etc. Terroir wines are completely different, and the terroir it's possible to have with the Barbera if you are in the Nizza, in some vineyard also in Barolo for sure, because our Barbera is different compared to your Barbera, and you can find the terroir in the same grapes, same wine in a different place. And so we take this direction to produce wine much more true, with much more identity. Good are good also before, clean are clean now, and also wine of respect. This is why we become also Equalitas certified, so sustainable winery, because respect for the earth pass through respect for the people, and we change our approach and philosophy to preserve what we are from the beginning. So classic means concrete tanks for fermentation, no selection is during the fermentation, big barrel for the aging. Big for us is from 2,000 liter to 20,000 liter. Different type of oak. We have Slavonian for all Nebbiolo, and some part of French Vosges, Jura for the Barbera, for example, and then some Cliver to do the Riserva after the long aging. Two vineyards, Cannubi and Annunziata. Cannubi is the most iconic and historical vineyard for the Barolo. So if the Barolo born in the 1850 thanks to the Marquis, the King, the Prime Minister of Italy at the time, Cannubi born exactly 100 years before, the first label with Cannubi on top, because perfect exposition, not really high in altitude, also for the climate of 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 260 meters on the sea level. Magic in the soil, because it's rich in silt plus 50%. It's give to the wine the volume in the middle of the palate. And the other part is mixing between clay and sand. The unicity of this, the soil, the structure of the soil in geologic epoch is Marne di Sant'Agata fossili. Another secret of this wine is the biotype of the old vines we have it, because I have shown before this clone, the Rosé. It's close to 20% of the production. You can also see the color in between the two wines are different. And then the other is Miche and Lampia. Lampia give to the wine the floral things and the freshness, and the Miche give the structure, the tannins, a little bit the power. To manage this character of the silt, so the volume, we used to make the 20%, in this case, in the 20 is 15% of fermentation in a whole cluster with the stem. And then we blended before to make the aging in oak. The rest is classic submerged cap for 20 days after fermentation. Annunziata, it's a completely different soil. Is a quite mixing between silt, sand, and clay. But the unicity of this type of soil is the richness in manganese and iron. So the soil is a little bit red, and red give to the wine these mineralities and section, also the fruitiness, and give to much more smoothy tannins compared to the other vineyards. And then these vines are from 56.
Planted in 1956?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, so it's 60 years old, 70 years old.
I love how different these wines are. They have such different registers, and also I think very different tannic textures. So the Cannubi is quite sort of ambassadorial, you know. It's sort of it sort of moves. It moves a bit like not like a sports car, but more of a sort of a cruiser. Whereas I find the Annunziata very kind of, it's a bit more nervy and sort of high-toned in a way. So how did you? So when you bought Borgogno, you had existing old vineyards. Is that the Liste? That
Yes.
was the existing plot. And then you were looking for more old vineyards.
Yes, existing Liste, existing San Pietro is not here, but we have also San Pietro. We use it for our Barolo Classico. Existing Cannubi. It doesn't exist Annunziata. Annunziata is a new vines enter in our vineyard, new vineyard enter in our property in 2019. So the first release is 2019. This is the second vintage, and we check it because It's old vines, and also it's a beautiful single vineyard, completely different compared to the single vineyard we have it in Barolo village. We have 7 crew into the 170 crew mentioned in the Barolo area. And all the 7 are in Barolo except Annunziata are in La Morra. So it's also for experiment something different in attaching the wine and understand the complexity. The history of Barolo is not produce a single vineyard. Usually the history of Barolo is a mix of the single vineyard to create our idea of Barolo Classico. Because thanks to this you have much more balancing, and every year you can do a great wine. And when you produce single vineyard you have many factors of difference, no? Climate, etc., etc. We are not, we don't have in our history to blend a different variety. For this reason we blended different vineyards.
Are there a lot of old vineyards in the Barolo DOCG?
See, I think so. I know so because so the Piedmontese is really close to Liguria, and to the Liguria people in Italy, the people say it's like this. Don't want to spend too many money. At Piedmontese are close the same. For this reason, before to cut a vineyard, kill himself. And so we have a lot of old vineyard. If you take the old map from the beginning of 19th century or in the 80s, the 1980s, you see which are the best single vineyards selected in the history in the Barolo era, like Cannubi, Lazzarito, Liste, and others. And probably in that vineyard you find old vines. In the last 40 years, the Barolo area growing a little bit. Not in the border are the same, but also some verse and some new crews coming. And so from the end of the 80s at today, many vineyards growing. Also because climate changed a little bit, and for example, the village where I live with my parents before, Novello, if you consider, when we arrived in Novello, from Alba to Novello in 94, our neighbors say, my father say, I want to plant a vineyard here. And the neighbors say, no, Novello is too high. Not good for Nebbiolo. Don't plant nothing. Don't mature. Today, if you go to Novello, vineyard everywhere, because now the conditions are super beautiful.
And you've also worked with a Massal selection project.
Yes.
Want to tell us a bit about that?
Yes. No, but don't worry. Don't look. This is my nerdism to write. Sometimes, yes, we work with Massal selection for the new implantation. Also only selection when we replanted in the same vineyard, just only the vines are dead. And for us it's super important to preserve this biotype of the Nebbiolo, because give to the wine a sort of stratification in a palate, in a different sensation, and preserve the unicity and the terroir, the capacity of the terroir to express by this different biotype. So for us, it's really important.
What do you think of these wines? I love their kind of controlled power, and they have a thing that I think you do find in Great Red Burgundy, which is aromatic nuance and definition. It's like a really beautifully cut ruby. There's so many different way that the sort of almost the perfumes like bounce off the wine,
because I don't like to make Muscat's wine, but I like to make marathon wine. I want to have marathonate wine. Wine to be the marathon, to have the capacity to have the capacity to aging for a long time. So over extraction body I don't like so much. Also because also the fine wine is important to be drinkable. It's not only a show, a glass. When I open a bottle, I want to drink all the bottle, if it don't cost so much. But so, and for this reason, for me, drinkability is one of the top points of the list when you want to make a wine. Otherwise, make a show, no make wine.
Yes. And I think actually it's really interesting just to consider, given that we're here in California, we've been talking a lot about Zinfandel, how there's been this huge transformation and shift in the style of Barolo. So it was a wine whose greatness was almost built on an idea of being really obdurate, and you'd have to wait for 20 years for it to open up, big long maceration, and really working on those really dry tannins of Nebbiolo. And then there was this big swing against it, where you had then producers making almost the exact opposite. And the so-called Barolo Wars, and what was really interesting is that it actually engaged the whole kind of the kind of covenant of the producers and the people who were buying the wines in a kind of living discussion, or almost kind of project on where should the wine end up. And I think the reason this is interesting for Zinfandel is because you have this incredible heritage of old vineyards. And actually the market feeds back to you and says, yeah, white Zin, not so much. Okay, there's this style of Zin. And I think it's so important that when you're custodians of these wines, that you, almost like a bit like your child analogy, you've got to sort of let the child kind of find its place and find its personality. And I think that's the great opportunity for Zinfandel. I love the kind of the way you've given these wines space to be powerful. It's really wonderful. Yeah, I'm a real Barolo.
So Zinfandel is the Barolo of the Napa. Okay. You can say that. Perfect. Okay. After Aglianico or before.
Fantastic. Thank you for bringing these wines. Very generous, beautiful wines.
Thank you.
And thank you for your candor in describing how you approach the project as well. I will put this presentation into the Dropbox so that you can also refer to it. These are splendidly geeky notes. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, don't apologise. Yes, and this is a bit more on the clonal selection. The great comeback. It cannot be lost. It will not be lost. Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, and now we're moving to the south. So we have two wines from two different wineries, but they are part of the same group. This is a group that is called Tenuta Capaldo Holdings. So very smart and very supportive of the Old Vine Conference. Antonio Capaldo. Viviana is the general manager and winemaker and head of viticulture at Basilisco, which is down here in Basilicata. And then we also have a wine from the other winery in the group, Feudi de San Gregorio, which is in Campania. They're both Aglianico. Mm-hmm. So do you want to take us through the... should we get into a bit of vineyard history? This is a good thing with these wines. So this is Feudi de San Gregorio in Campania, 3-meter high Aglianico vines, absolute units. And this is the Aglianico in Basilicata. So two very different expressions of training.
I just decided to put them literally one facing the other to show the difference and make it easier, and after a long day for everybody, just a bit more, rapid to get and so on. And I also wanted this unprofessional picture, because we have beautiful pictures, actually you see them later, but I love the idea of giving you a picture that gives, using my figure, gives you the idea of how this vine occupied space. They are completely different in attitude. They're both very old. The first one, the Feudi di San Gregorio vineyard Serpico, is older, is about almost 200 years old, where the Storico, the one that I normally run, is about 80 years old. And the most fascinating thing to me is that there is a concept behind it. The last picture you will see is a picture of Pompeii. The concept which is really fascinating me is that there is a word, an amazing word, which is ikonema. meaning something which is a symbol, an iconic identification of a territory. The training system is more iconic than the variety. A training system in this area is exactly the expression of the relationship between the humans living in the place and what they did in that place to have fruit, to make it healthy and wealthy for them. So in this place, you have in just a few kilometers the meeting between the Etruscan community and the Greek. Etruscan were growing high. They are some of the vine is almost 3 meters high, and the Greeks were alberello bushes. So you have basically a cultural border between these two communities, and it is perfectly expressed by the training system of the vines. So these both use Aglianico, so it's not a matter of what is more adapted for that variety, but is more connected to where they planted this Aglianico. The first one obviously is more protected from humidity, the other one from the heat. And the idea of two words getting in touch to each other and showing their culture, their art, their knowledge of the place through the way they will train the vines is something that really charming me. And the last picture would be Pompeii, because it's something that started this year, that we have the great honor of leading and guiding a project that will basically refurbish, partially replanting, and then reanimating the original vineyard in Pompeii, which is exactly 1.4 hectares is inside the wall of the park, and altogether is about a 7 hectares project. But what is amazing is that in Pompeii you have a typical Roman thing. They were so smart, they will allow and welcome and develop whatever is useful. So you have the two different systems in the same place. And I do like this, which are basically both this kind of training express the Mediterranean culture. So, and is like a melting pot of different styles. Talking about Aglianico, you can have a very different expression of like many variety, exactly like what Andrea said. We don't like to make Aglianico, we make a wine of territory. And we talk about it through the tool of Aglianico in this case. But the fascinating thing, these two wines, they are both on volcanic soil, both around 600 meters above sea levels, completely different profiles. The first one, which is Basilicata, where I am, the volcano is isolated about 50 kilometers from the sea, and the climate is a lot more gentle, and there is a very dramatic night excursion, but basically is less rainy and more sunny. And Irpinia, the second Aglianico, we are in an area where we have about 1,200 millimeters of rain in the year, and normally, and again, human ideas, culturally, they see Aglianico like something more dark, more nighty, more bushy, more forest wine. It's all more on hummus, dark fruit, where the other one is more ripe fruit. And in both expression, you feel the velvety tannins. Aglianico has very difficult tannins normally, but the old vines completely different. Both of them in a different way, but the tannins are smooth already. They are ripe in the perfect way, already at the harvest. So I came out with the 13 2 years ago, and we're still selling slowly because I really believe that Aglianico really wants a long aging if possible. And but the very charming thing is that old vine has a great impact, especially on tannins. And for us, working with Aglianico is a great advantage because tannins are enhancing normally the hard part of Aglianico, talking about this hematic, this minerality, which is very often sulfurous, and the acidity due to the altitude. But to have this ripeness, this softness, sweetness almost in tannins, balance the wine in a way that is very difficult to have in the other plots just next to it.
So I love these wines, and I love that we're trying them together, and how you've highlighted the cultural and the sort of the intent of the maker in part of terroir. So the Storico, it's like sticking your face into like an opening sort of soft black rose. You know when you have a rose petal that sort of has got a texture. There's something very sensorial about this wine. And 2013, I think it's really opening out now. But I know what you mean. There is a certain kind of like a shag pile to the tannins. It's sort of pillowy. And then as you were saying, the Serpico is much sort of black, dark fruit, quite almost a bit bloody, and but both of them absolutely crackling with energy and expressions of this incredible culture. And I do think this is the great. I think this is why Italians do have this resonance with old vines. I mean, this is a country where the Colosseum is just sort of left standing. In London we knocked all of that stuff down and kind of built on top of it. But also I think that it's a counterpoint to the traditional Italian rescue mission, where you'll have something very beautiful that intersects with place, people, time, terroir, variety. It gets a bit popular, and then it gets absolutely sort of commercialized in a bit of a panic. So if you think of things like Chianti, Soave, Valpolicella, they, rather than expand the value, it's almost like there's a bit of a panic and everyone expands the volume, and then they have to rescue them. Whereas I think the Italian South, it's a different story. It was anonymous because it was sent up on the train tracks, wasn't it, to kind of bolster the wines of the North. But I really think Aglianico is a bit like some of the varieties we've been talking about in California. It's a real secret superhero, and I think it has all the attributes of a really noble variety and this drama. And I think that kind of textural drama is so key. But as you say, with old vines, it's sort of it makes it it invites you in, and then you can enjoy the drama, I think. Thank you. Any comments on those wines? Yeah.
On the Serpico, I was just really struck by when you hike in the hills of California, there are lots of wild native plants that are similar to sage, and they're very resinous. And that wine has this nose that just reminded me of taking those things, rubbing them between your hands and then smelling your hands. It's really, really interesting. Very different, the two of them.
Yeah.
My partner has just finished fermenting a soy sauce,
Yeah.
and the Basilisco really reminds me of that kind of like earthy,
Yes.
sort of like salty, it smells amazing.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it reminds me of.
It's almost that balsamic character.
Yes.
And very often Vulture, which they're both volcanic, but we are actually 600 meters on a volcano. And on the white is very, very immediate the feeling of the salt that you mentioned. The Aglianico is a bit overwhelming and hide it, but the salt in the white is amazing.
Thank you.
Can I add something? Yes. Can I have a question?
Yeah.
It's just one thing that is not strictly connected, but it is with all what happened in these days here. I will be short. Is connected to the image of Pompeii. When we were there recently, there was a beautiful lecture from a professor of the university explaining that for the Romans, the holy fluid were for water, milk, wine, and blood. And wine was used in any, not just in the convivium, but in the specific ritual of linking people. For example, they recently found in April 2 graves, one with an ampolla in glass, sealed with wax, with inside 6 liters of wine of 2,000 years ago. They didn't taste it, I have to.
Are all invited to try.
The idea of just putting in the grave with the person, obviously is connected with the representation of blood, like we have in the religion things. And the other thing is a ritual took place in Pompeii, is when somebody died, normally when the head of the family died, they would pour some bottle of the best wine on the grave and leave it upside down, representing the blood of the family offered to the person. This is just, a little tale to say what is blood, what is wine. We're now having very often to face questions about how healthy is wine. Obviously, there is many contraindication, but the point is not how much you want to drink. The point is what is wine in our culture, in the last 2,000 years at least. And that's really, to me, is refocus what we've been saying in this day, the relationship with these people, handcraft, wine, vines, and what we do with our history, which is not just drinking and getting disease, is a lot more. And I think we have to reconnect with that in order to save the vines and to save the culture of wine.
Hear, hear. I think we should end with that beautiful sentence. Thank you.